Good morning and happy Friday, everyone. My name is Nick Marro with Occupied Fantasy. As always, I'm here to help break down tonight's NBA DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you. Also, if you're not already a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As a member, you'd get access to the model you see here, which I'll be using throughout the video. Gives you ownership percentages. You could sort by value for each site. As we have our OF index as well to show you the best overall plays. We have a single lineup builder, multi lineup builder, private Discord server full of seasoned DFS pros to help you improve your game. And there is a 30-minute window leading up to each slate's lock where you can ask your lineup and slate specific questions. All right, so without further ado, let's get into this one. We're going to go quick today. We got 10 games to get through. Big time Friday slate, locking at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. As always, I got a DraftKings window open, a FanDuel window open. I'm going to talk through the big injury news we got to keep an eye on. Most teams have their injury reports out, only a few teams on back-to-backs. So I'm going to slowly build lineups for each site as we talk through these plays. So I'm going to go in the order of the official NBA injury report. And yeah, we'll go through game by game, team by team. And I'm going to go as quickly as possible, getting you as much info as possible. So, first game, only one game locking at 7 p.m. We have the Hornets hosting the Magic. The Hornets are 4-point underdogs at home. We're looking at a 226.5 point game total here. So starting on the Charlotte side of things, obviously LaMelo Ball's likely out for the season, unfortunately. No Theo Maledon. PJ Washington is doubtful. Cody Martin is out as well. So there is a lot of extra usage to go around for these guys. We see Oubre's minutes ticking back up over 30. We see him drawing a lot of ownership as a direct result of that. Gordon Hayward, actually similarly priced, but way lower owned. So in tournaments, I do prefer Hayward over Oubre, but these are both excellent plays on the wing here. Terry Rozier's obviously probably the best play here for Charlotte. 7,700 on DK, 7,800 over on FanDuel. Just an excellent price for him with LaMelo out of the lineup. He's probably going to lead the team in usage. No real surprise there. Good matchup against Orlando too. Decent game total. I really like him. I think he's probably the first guy in today for me. I'm going to go ahead and pencil him in on both sites. So I really like Terry. I also really like the wings. I think you could go to Hayward and or Oubre. I don't know that I want to lock in too many spots from this game because as we often deal with these 10-game slates, as news starts to break after lock, you're going to want to be able to pivot. So you don't want to lock down too many of these spots. But for me, Terry's definitely a priority. We see that reflected in the ownership here. And Oubre, I mean, at 6,600 on DK, I think he looks excellent. Hayward, similar price. I'll just quickly bring up these game logs. I don't want to spend too much time here. And when I look at game logs, I'm mostly just looking at minutes. I really don't want to dig too deep into recent outcomes. Obviously, that's too small of a sample size to glean much from. But Hayward's been over 30 minutes consistently, which is good to see. And Oubre, who was working his way back from injury, is back over 30 minutes consistently, which is good to see as well. So let's go this way. I'll go Hayward over on FanDuel, where he's a little bit cheaper than Oubre, and I'll go Oubre over on DK. I think they're similarly priced, but getting that discount over FanDuel is nice to see. Again, don't want to lock too many spots down from this game, but I also wouldn't mind Dennis Smith Jr. if he were to suddenly slide into the starting lineup. They've been starting JT Thor at the 4, who's pretty much useless for DFS purposes. Mark Williams at center looks fine. He's going to be in play. If he gets in foul trouble, Nick Richards could be a really sneaky good value play in large field tournaments, but as things stand, I'm not really prioritizing either of these guys at center. Rozier is the prize here. He's the core play. Really like Oubre and Hayward on each site as well, though. And I don't know that I'd want all three of them in a lineup, so maybe kind of pick your favorites. But for me, Terry, he's going to be the chalkiest. You're going to want him in cash games. But I think he's kind of tough to get away from here in a good matchup with Orlando. So let's move over to the Magic side of the ball now. Taking a look here, only Jonathan Isaac is on the injury report. He's out, so this is a healthy team on a slate with a few teams that aren't so healthy. So it's going to be tough to prioritize anything here. That being said, I do like Banchero. He's still sub 8K. We've seen the 40 to 50 point ceiling out of him. It's rare now that this team is healthy. They do have a lot of mouths to feed, but the upside's certainly there for him as well. I mean, Cole Anthony only 4,100 on DK feels like a bit of a misprice. I know he's coming off a massive game. I don't know that we can expect him to replicate that production where he's over 40 fantasy point, but if he's going to push 30 minutes, 4,100 is too cheap. Wide range of outcomes for him, but he does correlate nicely with Oubre and Rozier. So maybe we pencil him in for now. Like I said, we're going to want to leave some spots open so we can pivot, but I do like Cole Anthony a lot over on DK at just 4,100. 6,200 on FanDuel, not nearly as appealing. I'd probably rather get to Fultz as a guard if I am going to play a guard from the Magic over on FanDuel, but at 7,200, I wouldn't call him a priority. Wendell Carter Jr. is fine, better on FanDuel where he's power forward eligible. Eligible, but yeah, I mean, all the Magic look okay here. It's a great matchup against Charlotte. Don't get me wrong, but it's tough to prioritize anything when they're healthy because they're all pretty much priced where they should be, except for maybe Anthony over on DK, which is obviously reflected in that very high ownership percentage. So let's move into the next game on the slate now. We have the Nets at the Celtics. I will not be in attendance tonight. I usually go to all these games, but I do have a lot of work to do this evening, and the Nets have been terrible, so I don't feel like I'm missing out much. But we get the Nets at the C's. C's are 11-point favorites here. We'll start over on Brooklyn. Ben Simmons is out. Edmund Sumner's out. Yuta Watanabe's out. So a little bit of extra usage to go around in this backcourt, but they also, like the Magic, have a lot of mouths to feed here. Mikal Bridges, high ceiling, pretty low floor, especially in a matchup like this one. I don't mind him. Not a priority, though. Probably my favorite net, other than Nick Claxton, is going to be Cam Johnson here. He's coming off a huge game. He's been shooting the lights out, very high usage rate. One of the only players on this team who's been consistent offensively. So I do like Cam Johnson over on DK, where he's just 5,500. But again, very tough matchup with Boston. There is some blowout risk here, so it's not a play I'm really rushing to get to. Claxton continues to produce at a pretty high level. 6,400 on DK looks fine. Probably wouldn't use him on FanDuel where you only have that one center spot. Finney Smith's been terrible. Love Cam Thomas, but he hasn't been getting enough minutes for me to want to go to him. Wouldn't hate getting to some Dinwiddie if I'm playing a bunch of lineups, but there's really no priorities here for the Nets tonight. Just not enough significant injury news, and it is a very tough matchup defensively. They're all pretty much priced where they should be, and they've all been struggling lately. So really not rushing to get to any Nets. On the Boston side of things, Jaylen Brown is listed as available. He's going to be wearing his face mask. Danilo Gallinari is still out. He's probably out for the whole season, so that's hardly notable. But yeah, Tatum looks great here. If Brown were to suddenly sit, he'd look even better. I don't know that the Celtics need to be full strength here, but yeah, tough not to like them. Tatum, obviously very high ceiling. Marcus Smart, he looks fine. Robert Williams, Horford, Brogdon, White. Pretty much all the starters and then Brogdon coming off the bench are going to be viable options. It is a good matchup with Brooklyn. They haven't figured it out defensively lately. But that being said, there is some blowout risk here. There's a lot of good games on the slate, so I don't know that you need to prioritize anything from Boston. But yeah, all the starters are fine. They're all viable. Just no core plays for me here. Moving into the next game on the slate, we have Portland traveling across the country to face the Hawks. The Hawks are 7-point favorites at home. We're looking at a 241.5 point game total here. Let's start with Atlanta hosting. They have Trae Young listed as probable with right groin soreness. I can't imagine he's out tonight. Again, he's listed as probable. He should be in. He's fine. 9,500 on DK, 9,800 over on FanDuel. He looks solid here. For a bit of a discount, you could get to DeJounte Murray. Not quite the same upside. But yeah, I mean, point per dollar, he is a similar play. With the Hawks changing their coach, we're seeing more minutes for Clint Capella, which makes him more appealing here, especially on DK at 5,600. That feels like a misprice to me. I'm going to go ahead and pencil in Capella. If you remember, Nurkic is still out, I believe, for the Blazers, which means this is a really soft matchup for the front court. So I like Capella a lot here, especially at that 5,600 over on DK. He's tougher to get to on FanDuel at 7,500. But Hunter, Collins, Bogdan, they're all kind of okay as secondary options. Nothing I'd really be prioritizing. I like the two guards here in Young and Murray, and Capella a lot over on DK. Moving over to Portland now. We have Nurkic still out, like I mentioned. Anthony Simons is doubtful. He re-injured that ankle, it seems. Justice Winslow still out as well. So Dame has been seeing massive, massive ceiling games and upside with Simons out of the lineup. Like that's the biggest reason for that. He's also seeing extra usage with no Nurkic. And yeah, I really like Dame here if you can afford him. 10-8 on FanDuel. Too cheap. He's over 11K on DraftKings. That's definitely tougher to get to, but if you can, he is one of my favorite payups on the board. There's a lot of good payups on the slate. We got 10 games to choose from, so we got a lot of good studs to choose from. But 10-8 for Dame, who's been over 11K consistently with Simons out of the lineup. That's too cheap over on FanDuel. I consider him a priority over there. And then, like I said, if you can fit him on DK, he is one of the better guard plays. I mean, we've already filled in most of these guard spots. But yeah, I'd be happy to pull maybe Oubre to get someone like Damon here. It would take some moving around. Like I don't want him to be in the utility spot in such an early game, but you guys get what I mean. Dame, if you can fit him, he's excellent. Still have 5K per player with this little bit of a core we've started. So I'll go ahead and pencil him in for now. Jeremy Grant hasn't been producing at a very high level, but he is viable. Not something I'm rushing to get to, especially over 10% owned on this 10 gamer. Just not my favorite type of play in this matchup. But Matisse Thybulle, he's been surprisingly effective with Portland since the trade. Better on FanDuel where you get extra points for blocks and steals, but he's been hitting value on DK as well. So I don't mind him as a value piece. Wouldn't call him a priority. Very wide range of outcomes. High ceiling, but low floor. Drew Eubanks is fine here, not a priority. And then all these kind of secondary wing plays. They're going to get some ownership because with Simons and Nurkic out, there is a little bit of extra usage to go around. If you recall, they also traded Josh Hart. So yeah, there's a lot to like here for Portland, but really Dame is the only thing I'm calling a priority. Really tough not to like him with Simons out of the lineup. He's just seeing a massive, massive usage rate, huge ceiling. One of the best pay up options on the board. All right, so we can move into the 8 o'clock window now. We have the Knicks at the Heat. The Heat are 3-point underdogs at home, just a 216-point game total here. So one of the lower totals on the board this evening. Let's start on the Miami side of things. So Jimmy Butler's listed as questionable, as he often is. Kyle Lowry's still out. Yurtsevens out. Jovic is out. Jamal Cain is with the G League. So if Butler's in, he's okay. He's back below 9K on both sites, which makes him a little bit easier to stomach as a play. But if Butler's out, then we're going to like Bam Adebayo a lot here. 8K flat on DK, 8,800 on FanDuel. Tyler Hero as well, sub 8K on both sites. He's going to look really solid if Butler's out of the lineup. If Butler's in, these are all okay as kind of last pieces in, but nothing you really want to be prioritizing. If Butler's out, you could even get to Kevin Love, maybe even Gabe Vincent or Victor Oladipo. Butler really does create a vacuum of usage for the rest of this team. So we got to keep an eye on this news. As things stand, there's nothing I'm really prioritizing for Miami, though. That is if Jimmy Butler is in. All right, so we can move over to the next side of things now. Let's see here. Nothing major, just a few G League guys on the injury report. So this is another healthy team kind of priced where they should be in a really bad matchup. One of the lower totals on the slate. So if you get to some Brunson, Randall, Robinson, maybe Barrett, or even quickly off the bench, I wouldn't hate it. But there's just no priorities here in a very low totaled game with a healthy team all priced where they should be. So nothing from the Knicks I'm really going to hone in on. Moving into the next game on the slate now. We have the Suns at the Bulls. The Bulls are 4-point underdogs at home. We're looking at a 223.5 point game total here. The Suns now have KD. We'll start with Phoenix. So yeah, as KD's in there, he's obviously going to cut into the usage of guys like Booker, Ayton, Paul. But at the same time, I mean, they're going to be able to run more pick and roll with Ayton. It could help Ayton in the long run. But again, another healthy team, all kind of priced where they should be. If you're landing on Booker, you're landing on Durant. I wouldn't be upset about it. Same with Ayton, especially over on DK, where you could play two centers at 8,200. He's fine. It's just tough to prioritize anything here really until we kind of see a bit bigger of a sample size, see how some of these usage rates shake out, and who's hitting ceilings on a nightly basis. Also, I do expect the prices on guys like Booker and Paul to come down now that Durant's in the lineup. So yeah, I don't mind Durant here. I don't know that he's going to get his full run of minutes yet, but he's at least viable. But yeah, another healthy team, price where they should be. It's tough to prioritize anything from Phoenix. On the Chicago side of things, Alonzo Ball's probably out for the season. That's really the only significant piece of injury news here. So we have Vooch, we have DeRozan, we have Levine, all fine plays. But again, all kind of price where they should be in a tough matchup with Phoenix. So I'm really not prioritizing anything there. Patrick Beverley's been getting the starts. If we see Patrick Williams take over, kind of shift DeRozan back to that wing spot, then maybe you could get to some Patrick Williams. But as things stand, I'm really not interested in any of the value for Chicago. I think Vooch, DeRozan, and Levine are all fine, but I'm not really going to call any of them priority plays. Moving into the next game, we have the Jazz at the Thunder. The Thunder are 1-point favorites at home, 231 point game total here. So let's start with OKC. They got a bunch of names on the injury report. All right, SGA is still out. Poku's out. Kenrich Williams is out, likely out for the season. Lindy Waters is back down with the G League. Chet Holmgren obviously out as well. So Josh Giddey did finally get a good run of minutes here. I'm curious if the Thunder are on a back-to-back. I'll take a look at this on my other screen because when they've been playing back-to-backs, they've been resting the starters like in one of the two games. Yeah, so they don't play till Sunday. So I think there's a good chance we can trust these guys' minutes tonight. I mean, obviously that's tough to say, but Giddy, Dort look excellent here. Again, SGA's out of the lineup. Jalen Williams with an L. His price is up, but he's been outstanding. If we see Isaiah Joe slide back into the starting lineup, he looked good to me here as well. Another piece of value we can consider Dario Saric. If he's starting, I wouldn't mind him. He's been coming off the bench and he's been decent, but it's really tough for me to want to stomach that on a 10-game slate. So really, the priorities here are both Giddy and Dort. I like them a lot on both sides, especially Dort, where you're getting him at a thin, small forward position on both sides. I think he's very appealing. So I'll actually go ahead. It's been a while since I pulled anything in, but there just haven't been many priority plays from any of these games. So let me go ahead and grab some OKC. I do like Giddy. I'll pencil him in for now. 8K does feel a little bit expensive, but he has a very high ceiling if he's going to get his regular run of minutes. Same with Dort. I think at 6K flat, he's fine on FanDuel. Dort's even more appealing over on DK, where you're getting him at 5,500. I don't know that I'm going to go ahead and pencil Giddy in yet here, though. But yeah, I mean, 7,900, he's fine for now. Probably won't stick with him. I'm going to go ahead and pull him actually. But yeah, Giddy and Dort look great on both sides. Jalen Williams as well in large field tournaments. Isaiah Joe if he starts. Dario Saric if he starts. Other than that, no real priorities for OKC. Moving on to the Utah Jazz. We have Jordan Clarkson still out, Colin Sexton still out, which means Chris Dunn should continue to see a big run at that point guard spot. He's going to be coming off the bench in all likelihood. We saw Agbaji get the start, and he actually did produce pretty well. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you can get to Chris Dunn as shooting guard, is he still shooting guard eligible? Let's see here. Point guard only, but we can move Giddy, so we could go Gun Dunn at point guard, Giddy at shooting guard. Coming off the bench, I mean, he does have a limited upside, but we're lacking value as things stand. I'm hoping more opens up throughout the day, and maybe we can get away from Chris Dunn. Pretty risky coming off the bench. But with no Sexton, no Clarkson, he should continue to produce at a pretty high level. I think the safer play here is Taylor Horton Tucker. He's just a little bit more expensive. 6,300 on FanDuel, 6,400 over on DK. He looks solid. I mean, honestly, on FanDuel, where we already penciled in Dort, I'd probably prefer to go to Taylor Horton Tucker just given his recent production and only the 300 difference in price. Um, but yeah, I think if Dunn's going to be over-owned again, we could probably get away from him. If he were to suddenly start, though, he'd be pretty much a lock-and-load type play. We saw 23 minutes the game before, 25 last time out. Maybe he gets up to 27 here, which could be enough for him to suddenly start. But yeah, coming off the bench, he's a good value play. Definitely better on FanDuel than he is on DK, even though he's a little bit more expensive. That 200 difference, I don't know. It's just pricing's a little softer on FanDuel, and yeah, I don't want to use up all these guard spots on DK. I mean, we really like Rozier, we really like Dame. We have Cole Anthony at 4,100 on DK, which is why I'm more comfortable going to Dunn over on FanDuel where we don't have that piece of value at guard. But again, I'm hoping we get more value throughout the day. If you want to go back to Agbaji, feel free. That's probably not a play for me. I think he had a ceiling game last time. If anyone wants to chase those points, it's probably not wise. Walker Kessler's okay in the front court, very high upside, but he's getting expensive, especially on FanDuel where he's 8K. Kelly Olynyk, he's fine. Not a priority for me, though. And then Laurie Markkinen. 9,600 on DK is tough to stomach, but 8,600 on FanDuel, he's pretty much a core play for me over there. You can play him at either forward position. Really tough not to like him on FanDuel in a great matchup with OKC. So just to recap quickly, Chris Dunn's good value right now, but if more value opens up throughout the day, you could probably get away from that chalk and feel pretty good about it. Agbaji's okay in large field tournaments, probably not going to get to him. Horton Tucker looks great on both sides. He's probably my favorite Jazz play here. Then Laurie Markkinen on FanDuel is pretty much a smash at 8,600. Really tough for me to want to get away from him at that price with both Sexton and Clarkson out of the lineup. So a lot about the Jazz there. Let's move in the 10 o'clock window now. We got a few late games still to get through. We get the Clippers at the Kings. The Kings are 5.5 point favorites at home. We'll start with Sacramento because the Clippers are on a back-to-back, so we don't have their injury report yet. Kings, De'Aaron Fox is questionable. Rashawn Holmes is questionable. If Fox is out again, that means we're going to see Davion Mitchell slide in the starting lineup. I think everyone's sick of playing him when Fox is out, but he did finally have a good game in his absence. So in large field tournaments, I wouldn't mind going to Mitchell as a guard play. Probably wouldn't use him in cash even with Fox out. With Fox in, There's really no priorities here. Sabonis looks fine on both sites. Sabonis would see a considerable boost in his own usage if Fox is ruled out, so keep an eye on that one. And then if Fox is out, maybe we could get to someone like Terrence Davis or Malik Monk, but Monk has been priced up over 5K on both sites now. A little bit tougher to get to, but it is a good matchup here. Secondary options like Herter, Murray, they're fine. Really not calling anything a priority here, though. Even if Fox is out, I don't know that I'm calling anything a priority other than maybe Sabonis, who looks great, where you can play him at power forward on FanDuel at 9,600. That's just a really appealing price to me. And then even at 10K on DK, where you're playing him at center, 10-1 actually, with Fox out, that's just a really solid option. So keep an eye on that news. We're probably not going to have it till late. Maybe leave some room for yourself to pivot. There are other late games to make that possible. But yeah, as things stand, no priorities for me from the Kings. Over on the Clipper side of things, no injury report, but we did already get a little bit of news. It sounds like Paul George is going to be in, Kawhi Leonard's going to be out. They have been limiting Paul George's minutes, but he only played 27 last night. So on the front end of a back-to-back, he should be okay here to get his normal run. 8,300 on DK, he looks good over there. 9K on FanDuel, fine, not something I'm prioritizing. Zubac is probably going to be questionable again. If he's out, that would make Mason Plumlee more appealing. 5K flat on DK would be too cheap. 5,300 on FanDuel as well. Again, this is if Zubac is out, because if Zubac's in, that's really going to cut into Plumlee's minutes and upside. Zubac might actually be the better center play there if he is indeed in. Last night we saw Marcus Morris sit for Eric Gordon, who slid in the starting lineup. Gordon's cheap enough if he starts again. You could use him as a value play. And then we have good old Russell Westbrook. He should see a little bit extra usage with Kawhi out of the lineup here, but it's tough for me to ever call Russ a priority, so I'm not going to. All right. So yeah, one of the only teams on a back-to-back. We're gonna wait and see on this news. Sounds like George wants to play, but it wouldn't shock me if they rested him, because they have been kind of treating him with training wheels with this injury. But yeah, the priority here for me is Plumlee if Zubac is out, so keep an eye on that. All right, moving into the next game on the slate. Now we have the Grizzlies at the Nuggets. The Nuggets are 5-point favorites at home, looking at a 234-point game total here, so one of the best on the slate. Aaron Gordon's listed as probable. Michael Porter Jr. is listed as probable. Everything else is kind of G League for the Denver Nuggets. So yeah, if you can afford Jokic, he's one of the best plays on the slate. Memphis not the best matchup, dealing with Jaren Jackson with Steven Adams out of the lineup. Jokic should continue to thrive in a spot like this. So I know we already penciled in Dame. It's going to be pretty much impossible to fit both of them. But if you prefer Joker, it does give you more flexibility if you play him late, because if Dame locks early, it's going to be harder to make pivots. So maybe you go with Joker instead. I'm totally fine with either. I'm kind of actually leaning Dame as things stand, with Simons out of the lineup, but all things considered, Jokic is just as good, if not better, in terms of upside. So love him here. Jamal Murray's been solid, a reasonably priced guard. He looks good on both sites. Both Gordon and Porter Jr. is fine as secondary options. Don't mind Kentavious Caldwell Pope either. Wouldn't play any Bruce Brown unless Gordon or MPJ are out and Brown ends up starting. But as things stand, the only priority here really is Jokic. I do like Murray in tournaments as well, but other than Joker, tough to get too excited about anything for Denver, even in a pretty appealing game environment. Over on the Memphis side of things, Ja might be wearing a mask as well, just like Jalen Brown. He's available though, and then Steven Adams is listed as out. Keep an eye on the starting lineup. If we see Tillman starting at center, he's going to be appealing value. If we see Clark starting at center, he's going to be appealing value. I prefer Tillman of the two, but again, I probably wouldn't play him coming off the bench, so just keep an eye on that situation. John Morant joins Dame and others as premier guard plays on this slate. If you can afford him, he looks excellent. Over 10K now on both sides, so not going to force him or call him a top priority, but this is a good matchup for him. I do like him here. It's just his team's healthy, so he's sharing usage with the likes of Brooks, Bain, Jackson, who are all okay as secondary options, but none are really priorities for me. So just one other thing to touch on. This is a road game for Jaren Jackson. There's this narrative going right now that he's been much more productive in home games because of the scorekeeping with blocks, steals, etc. I still think he's fine here, just not something I'm rushing to get to on a 10-game slate around 8K. He's pretty much priced where he should be. Um, all right, we are moving right along. We have the Pelicans at the Warriors. The Warriors are 4.5-point favorites at home, 230.5-point game total here. So another pretty appealing game environment. Warriors on a back-to-back. We do not have their injury report, which is unfortunate. Um, I'm guessing Wiggins and Steph are both still out. We can kind of count on that. Jordan Poole was questionable for a lot of yesterday. He ended up playing. If he's in, he looks great, especially on FanDuel where he is only 7,600. That's too cheap for him over there. Um, Clay Thompson's fine. Very wide range of outcomes at that 8K price tag, though. Pretty high ceiling, also pretty low floor for that price. But if he's hot, he's the type of play under 10% that could help you climb a leaderboard. Draymond's fine if he's in, not something I'm prioritizing, especially on FanDuel. 7,700, that's too expensive. Wouldn't play any Draymond on FanDuel at that price, but 6,500 on DK, much easier to get behind. Dante DiVincenzo's fine here if Wiggins is out again. Kevon Looney, he's okay. And if we see Kuminga start, he actually had a really good game last night. Wouldn't mind going back to the well with him. But again, team on a back-to-back. We got to wait and see on this injury news. As things stand, I'd call Jordan Poole a priority over on FanDuel. That's really it for me from Golden State, though. Wouldn't mind Kuminga if he starts as a value play. But yeah, I'm really hoping we get better value throughout the day. So keep an eye on the news. Over on the Pelican side of things, Joval is doubtful. Zion is out. Larry Nance is out. Yeah, so this is going to be a little bit tricky here. We're probably going to get a great value center from this game. I don't know if it's going to be Hayes or Hernan Gomez, though. So we kind of have to wait and see. Just going to pull these guys up quickly. Yeah, so Hernan Gomez started last time. He only played 20 minutes. Let's see what Hayes got off the bench. Hayes, 36 fantasy points in 15 minutes. So maybe what you do is you go ahead. Both of these guys have power forward eligibility over on FanDuel. They're only 100 apart. Just put in the more expensive guy. And if we get Hernan Gomez starting over Hayes, you could easily make that pivot. But as things stand, I do want one of these two centers here. Not only is Joval doubtful and likely to be out, but his backup Larry Nance is as well. So there's going to be a lot of good minutes to go around in this front court. Then let's take a look over on DK. I know we have Capella penciled in here, but let's see. You can play two centers over here. And yeah, similar situation. It's just kind of reversed. If you put in Hernan Gomez and Hayes ends up starting, just make sure you have the salary to make that pivot up if you start with Hayes. So I'd rather just start with the more expensive guy. Go ahead, put Hernan Gomez in, and if Hayes gets a start over him, you could easily pivot. You got 500 extra to play with. So really like the centers for the Pels, but it's tough to know who's going to start. If I had to guess, I'd say it'd be Hernan Gomez again, but at the same time, I'd almost prefer it to be Hayes. He's been the much better fantasy producer. Um, Golden State isn't huge or anything, so they could go either way here. So keep an eye on that situation. It's definitely fluid, but I do want one of the centers from the Pelicans in all likelihood. Ingram and McCollum both look great on both sides. Ingram's been excellent. Still right around that mid 8K range. He's solid play on both sides. CJ McCollum at 7,800 on DK. He looks good here as well. Other than that, all kind of secondary options, but keep an eye on that starting lineup. Whoever starts at center, as long as Joval is out, is going to be a core play for me. Um, all right, one more game now. We got the Timberwolves at the Lakers. The Lakers are 1 point favorites at home. 227.5 point game total here. The Lakers are obviously still without LeBron. Anthony Davis is probable. D'Angelo Russell's still out. Dennis Schroeder is probable. So AD is the prize here if you can afford him. Better on DK where he's only 10-2. One of my favorite payups on the board. 11-5 on FanDuel is tougher to stomach, but there is a little bit more flexibility because you can play him at power forward. So if you can get to AD, he looks good on both sides. Dennis Schroeder, he's been excellent. He's priced up on FanDuel now, though, pushing 7K. Much easier to get to on DK at 5,800. Malik Beasley's solid. Jared Vanderbilt, now that he's priced up, into that mid 5K range. I don't know that I'm getting to him as frequently. But yeah, I really like Beasley, really like Schroeder. And then Anthony Davis is a excellent option if you could afford him. Secondary plays like Reeves, Brown Jr., Walker are all okay, but of those three, it's tough to know who's going to go off. You could throw Rui in that group as well. I think one or even two of these wings could have a really good game here, but you're kind of picking and choosing, which makes them more large field tournament type plays. Over on the Minnesota side of things, obviously, no Karl Anthony Towns. Jalen Noel is questionable. So Edwards looks fine on both sides, 9,400. That's totally reasonable to me. Rudy Gobert, as long as he's in, sub 8K, he looks okay. Kyle Anderson, sub 6K at a thin forward position. He makes some sense. And if you can't get to Kyle Anderson, you get McDaniels as a similar play for a little bit cheaper. Not quite as much upside, but again, you're getting a little bit of a discount. So any of those four, Edwards, Gobert, Anderson, McDaniels, are fine to me. Don't mind Mike Conley. I'd rather get to very cheap guards, though, or very expensive guards. He's kind of in a dead range to me on this particular slate. If Gobert's ever suddenly ruled out, Naz Reid becomes one of the best plays on the slate. Gobert's not on the injury report as things stand, but he often shows up later in the day, so just keep that in mind. All right, so we went through all 10 games here. I'll quickly look at what I started to build. Obviously, I was pulling and adding throughout, so there's some core plays that, like, if we get to Jokic, we can't get to Dame, but I think you want one of the two. They both look excellent here. We're going to want the center for the Pels. And then, yeah, Utah looks great on FanDuel. Hoping I can get off Chris Dunn, but Horton Tucker and Markkanen both look excellent. Hayward and Rozier both look excellent for Charlotte with LaMelo Ball still out of the lineup. Over on DK, similar scenarios. We got Dort, 5,500, very appealing with SGA out of the lineup. Rozier, who we mentioned, either center for New Orleans, whoever starts. You also get Cole Anthony as value from Orlando, which is 4,100. And then, like I said, you're playing probably one of Dame or Jokic. Quickly looking at ownership right now. No surprises. Cole Anthony, Rozier, Oubre, Davis, Dort, Lillard, Dunn, Jokic over on DK are the top few owned guys. Dunn, Rozier, Horton Tucker, Oubre. Kogi's getting up there. Probably won't get to him much. Lillard, Markkanen, Dort, Ingram over on FanDuel. Sorting by index, which is mostly just a weight of raw point upside and then combined with price. Lillard's drawing the highest index score, which is not surprising to me. Again, Anthony Simons out of the lineup makes him more appealing. But you could get the Joker at lower ownership and feel pretty good about it. Those are kind of the two best plays on the slate. AD is probably in a tier like 1A right after them. And then Laurie on FanDuel is definitely too cheap. So a lot to like on the top end. I like a lot to like in the mid range. I'm hoping we get more value throughout the day. Once again, my name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, check the links in the description below, become a member of Occupy Fantasy today. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone. Happy Friday. Let's make